This mind-boggling system of rams and pumps and hydraulically operated chamber doors with few modifications still stands with integrity 100 years later, to the amazement and joy of sightseers and boaters of all ages. It is a fascinating mechanical monument to the engineering prowess and resourcefulness of Richard Birdsall Rogers. Born into a family of 9 children, Rogers lived in Ashburnham on the east side of the river from Peterborough. At the age of 17, he left home to attend Montreal's McGill College. Then he acquired degrees in civil and mechanical engineering, and then his Bachelor of Science degree, before returning home to Ontario. A year later, he would become a provincial land surveyor, and in 1880, a Dominion land surveyor, a position he would hold until 1884. During this appointment, Rogers traveled to France, Belgium, and England. Armed with a letter of introduction, he planned to research various construction techniques in those countries. Response to his inquiries was disappointing. Many of the engineers he'd planned to meet were often too busy to make time for him, and had it not been for his persistence, he might well have come away empty-handed. Instead, he returned with the information he felt he needed to move forward with his plans for construction of a lift lock, and with an enthusiasm that convinced the government of the day to move ahead with this unusual and cutting-edge project. But the road ahead would not be an easy one for this innovative engineer. Rogers was summoned to a seemingly endless string of meetings, often to Ottawa and Montreal, to review progress, to explain his somewhat avant-garde approach to construction, and to simply reassure authorities that the project was on track. And the press added to his frustrations. While some newspapers were supportive, others warned of exploding expenses. One of the main problems presented by the project had to do with methodologies surrounding the use of concrete. With knowledge gleaned from his European fact-finding mission, Rogers, after experimenting with concrete on a number of Trent Canal locks, dams, and bridges, and delving into new technologies in the mixing of cement, decided on a dry pour method, without reinforcing steel, not only risky, but costly and time-consuming. One look at the structure today, and it's clear that it was a correct approach, with only minor repairs, often cosmetic ones, that, according to Brian O'Neill, Parks Canada maintenance engineer, posed interesting challenges of their own during renovations in advance of the lift lock centennial celebrations.
We are using a concrete mix, and in order to visually match it with the 100-year-old concrete, which is more brown in color, we're coating the new concrete with a top coat, and it also forms a more waterproof layer as well, which will stop intrusion of water into the structure.
In all, nearly 20,000 cubic meters of concrete was used in the Peterborough lift lock construction, and while every effort was made to finish the concrete phase of the project by the end of 1901, it was not until early in 1902 that it finally saw completion, with very little ceremony. Rogers himself was dismissed amid allegations of overspending and questionable construction choices. Despite a great deal of professional humiliation, ongoing court battles, and labor difficulties, Rogers' commitment to his architectural dream never lessened. This remarkable man was, of course, years later vindicated. His methods and construction choices found sound, his dismissal blamed on political conspiracies. Eventually, he would be highly acclaimed for his foresight and skill.
He certainly pulled it together, and he brought design and information together to build the lock that nobody else was doing. He looked at the locks in Europe, he picked the best parts of them, and he was able to come up with a structure in Canada that was better.
The lift lock is massive and somewhat daunting as it encircles our tour boat with tons of concrete and steel. Two massive steel chambers, 42.7 meters long by 10 meters wide and approximately 2.1 meters deep, are supported by trusses and girders resting on two cast iron rams. When filled, each chamber weighs 1,500 tons. The cast iron rams or pistons fit inside presses or cylinders that in the Belgian lock were made of cast iron as well. The problem, cast iron has a relatively weak tensile strength. So in the Belgian structure, steel bands had to be installed around the presses to help them withstand the enormous pressure. Here again, Rogers departed from tradition in his design, choosing a stronger option.
When he got negotiating with Dominion Bridge, who were doing the steelwork design, they wanted to try a new material at the time. They wanted to do cast steel, a cast steel press, and eliminate the need for steel bands and a cast iron press. So that's what he went with. But he had enough nerve to try these things.
The system of raising and lowering watercraft is remarkably simple. By adding an extra 30 centimeters of water to the upper chamber, it weighs 144 tons more than the lower chamber. And by using an underground valve, the lower chamber, pushed by the heavier upper chamber, rises the 19.8 meters to the upper position in a relatively short time. The Peterborough lift lock was designed as an improvement to the conventional lock system that consumes an enormous amount of water and takes substantially longer than the estimated 10 to 12 minutes it takes to ascend or descend that nearly 20 meters made possible by the lift lock. Rogers had argued that a hydraulic lift lock would reduce construction costs, satisfy water shortage concerns, and be generally more efficient. There are few today who would disagree.